Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the magical places that they can lead us to. I have such a special guest today. She's a fabulous author, Nicole Fanning. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I'm so excited to have you here. We're going to talk about your new book, which is part two in your Heart of the Inferno book series. Very exciting. It just launched last month. But before we get into that, we are going to talk about doing things we never thought we would do. And I always say creatives always have wild imaginations, and I'm sure you are no exception to that rule. And I'm sure you've done, like one or two things you never thought you would.
Oh, definitely.
Can you
Um,
share
I
one
think
today?
the first I think the first thing that comes to mind is I never thought I would have three rescue dogs. I always grew up with a family dog. I always had one.
Mhm.
For a while when I was single, I was on my own. And I just had one. And then sadly he passed away with cancer. And my husband and I at that we were married at that point. He had his dog, and so I was without a dog. Um, and so I was just, I'm like, okay, well, it's fine. We'll just share your dog, right? That's no big deal. And then he ended up finding me this little rescue that was very similar looking to my dog that had passed away. And so I
Mhm.
was like, oh my gosh, now we have two dogs, and like, now you're mine, and now I'm going to love you forever. And that was great, except that like he like kind of fell in love with my husband. So then my husband had two dogs, and I had, part of those two dogs, but they weren't mine. And so then I ended up finding, it was kind of just random. Somebody had said, like, hey, there's this, little American Eskimo dog that needs a home. And I was like, I just, three? Like, that seems so crazy. But as soon as I met him and saw him, I was like, I have to take you home. So we actually, at that point, we had two puppies in the home with us
Wow.
about 6 weeks apart. So it was not only like we went from having one dog to having two dogs to three dogs pretty quick, but it was also we went from having one dog that was like, 7, 8 years old, an older dog, to having an older dog and two puppies. So I always tell people it's like bringing home twins. I mean, I don't have children, so that's just my assumption that it's like bringing home twins, but it was a lot of crazy late nights, and it was pretty wild there for a while. So, but now I can't imagine my life without them, and they're the three little musketeers. So, it is what it is. And it's funny how life just kind of puts things in your path that you never knew you needed. And I need all three of them for completely different reasons. So, my older one is the snuggler. The one that my husband ended up getting for me, he's the Chihuahua. And it's so funny because he is the smallest of the bunch, but he is like the mastermind behind all of the mischief that happens in the house. So he's definitely the little feisty one, and he's a riot. He's too funny. He literally he'll bark at things outside to make the other two think that there's someone outside so that he can go and steal their treats while they're barking at things outside. So when I say he's a mastermind, he's a total mastermind, and nobody taught him that trick. He did it himself. So, and then I have mine, who is the little American Eskimo. He's actually in the room with me right now because he just can't be anywhere without mom. So yeah.
Oh,
So that's my
so
never thought I would. I mean, I always I love dogs always, but I always had one dog. It was always one family dog, and then we went from one to three. So
yeah, three is a lot of work. It's a lot more work.
it is. And my husband and I joke all the time about how we're outnumbered. There's three of them and two of us.
So I'm curious, can you walk all three of them by yourself? I guess the other two are smaller, which makes it a little
I
easier.
Yes and no. I definitely have done them all three by myself, but then they definitely have days where we look bad as a unit if it's just me by myself and three dogs. They just literally run circles around me. And I'm just standing there wrapped up in dog leashes, like, we look terrible as a unit right now, guys. Like, our neighbors are watching this. Yeah, but just crazy, crazy stuff.
So how old are the puppies now?
My oldest is 12, and then the two puppies, they're 6 now, so they're not puppies anymore, but they
Oh,
are,
wow.
yeah. And they're so funny. They're best of buds too.
Mhm.
Like my dog is like the hard alpha, like he's always the loudest, the I have to go first. But when the Chihuahua's concerned, he's like, nope, he can go first. He can take my bones, he can do whatever he wants. He just lets the Chihuahua walk all over him. So kind of funny.
That's
They're a
funny.
riot.
So, okay, I'm curious, what was the period of adjustment like? Because your husband has had this dog for 12 years or 8, I think you said when you first,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. So, what was that like and what's the oldest dog's name?
He's Rocky.
Rocky. So,
He
what was it
I
like
was
for Rocky to all of a sudden be an only child, for all
so
this
yeah,
time and then have two
he
little puppies to deal with?
yeah, he I think there was definitely like some like some I don't know. Maybe like I'm even hesitant to say that because he always treated them like he just was so excited to have playmates. So he was always really good to them. There really wasn't much of like any drama whatsoever. I think when my husband and I like got together and Rocky was like, oh, I can have a woman in my life now. He was very much like, I like her, like she smells nice and I want to cuddle with her. And then all of a sudden there was like two other dogs that were like, but we want mom too. So I think he was like, well, I thought I was, getting a girlfriend and now I'd have to share her with these other two that are just invading my house. But yeah, he's great. He's always been a good dog. So he's actually a rescue from the Bahamas. He was
Wow.
just wandering the Bahamas with like his mom. There was like 4 puppies and him. And they scooped him up and brought him over to the States and we were lucky enough to snag him. So yeah.
That's incredible. And what are the names of the other two? What's the Chihuahua's name?
The Chihuahua is accurately named Loki. So he's my little mischief manager. And mine, the American Eskimo, his name is Benji. And it
Benji.
wasn't the name I chose for him because I had chose Thor because I figured, like they're coming in at the same time. They'll be named Loki and Thor. But he just didn't answer to Thor. He refused. He refused to answer to that name.
He's like, that is
And
not my name.
right. And so I was just kind of throwing out stuff. And I think there was like a commercial or something that had Benji on it. And he just looked up and I'm like, that's a weird name, but okay, sure. All right, dude. So he like kind of chose his own name. Yeah, but the original plan was for them to be named Rocky, Loki, and Thor. But he didn't want to be Thor at all.
Oh, that's so funny. That's hilarious. And what's like one of the craziest hijinkses those 3 dogs got into when you and your husband weren't at home? What was like
Oh,
the biggest disaster you walked into? Because with 3 dogs, especially when you first got the little ones, I'm sure there was
for
like
sure.
some something.
Oh, for sure. So the Chihuahua actually figured out how to open the cage. So he actually got out and I assume let the other 2 out. And we had just bought 2 really expensive like dog beds. Like I think the dog beds, they were like they had the memory foam in them and they were like $100 a piece and they destroyed both of them. So we came home and I was like, what is this fluff that's all over the floor? And then the Chihuahua comes running out to meet me and I'm like, what are you doing out? And then the other 2 come running out and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, did I not lock the cages? Like what's going on? And then I walk into the living room and it was just all fluff all over the place. And it was just, I'm like, please tell me these are from your old beds. Please tell me these are from your old. I was almost hoping they were like from the couch cushions more than I were hoping they were from the dog beds that it was like 2 days. We'd had the dog beds 2 days and
Yeah.
they destroyed both of them in 2 days. So yeah, that's why I say we're outnumbered occasionally. But yeah,
Yeah, that's what happens.
yep. They come into your life and they change everything. So we're lucky. We're very fortunate to have them.
Yes, definitely. And I love that you rescued all of them.
Yep. Yep. They're all 3. We've been advocates for rescues pretty much from both of like from birth, both of us were. But Yeah, they pick you. They totally do. Because I know when my husband got his dog, he wasn't planning on getting a dog that day either. He was actually having some work done on his car, and there was like a dog rescue right next door to where he was having the work done on his car, and he just wandered in to pass some time, and he walked out with the dog. Um, so yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's easy to walk into a dog rescue and walk out without
Oh
something.
no. I'm not allowed to go into those places because I will walk out with them for sure. So, um, but I think we had lots of plans to travel all the time, and I think that changes a little bit when you have three dogs because it's always easy to get someone to watch like one dog.
Yes.
Or even, to like kennel one dog, but getting someone to watch three dogs is like, so I'll trade you this kidney if you can come watch my dogs for, a week. Uh,
Yeah, I've done
uh,
my share of dog sitting, and two is the most that I've
she was, yep.
two
So
is the most
it,
that I've done.
it, it definitely changed our long-term plans, but I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't change anything about it. So
It's
yeah.
wonderful. Oh, how exciting. Well, oh my goodness, dog mom and romance author.
I know, right? I know.
Yes, it's awesome. So actually, I'm quite eager to talk about your Heart of the Inferno series. And so your first book is called Catalyst, and your second book is called Ignite. Catalyst is book one, Ignite is book two that just came out last month. But
Yeah.
let's start at the beginning, and if you can tell us a little bit about Catalyst before we get into
Sure.
Ignite.
Absolutely. So really I have two main characters. So the book alternates perspective between Jackson Pace, who is our Mafia Don in Chicago. He's technically what's considered the Don Supreme. So there's several Mafia clans in Chicago. They all run different areas or different aspects of the city. But Jackson is the Don Supreme, meaning that he has the most powerful Mafia and he's in charge of all of them. And then we have Natalie Tyler, who is our nurse, who is visiting from Chicago. And she is actually staying at one of the hotels that Jackson owns because he's also a billionaire and he has many different businesses. And one of them are these really luxury hotels. So she is staying in Chicago at one of his hotels for her cousin's wedding. And she's there for a week, and it's a really tough week for her because her ex fiance is actually the best man in the wedding. And her family is not really aware that the reason she called off the wedding was because she found him cheating on her. Because her ex fiance had been best friends with her cousin and very connected to her family, she kind of just broke things off and then kept her distance for the last 2 years. And her family is just kind of like, why aren't these two together? They should get back together. So they're in full blown, like, this is the perfect opportunity for them to resolve their differences and get back together because they don't really know why that happened. Um, and so she kind of shows up to Chicago and she's just, hoping to survive. And upon her arriving in Chicago, she kind of ends up in a place she's not supposed to be, and she ends up thwarting the kidnapping of Jackson's daughter. So Jackson is a single dad, he's a widower, and his daughter was about to be kidnapped, and she was just kind of in that place to stop it from happening. So that's how kind of they cross paths, and like because he is the man that he is, he's immediately suspicious. Like he thinks this was part of a plot, he thinks that she's from another family, he doesn't trust her at all. And she's kind of like, dude, I did you a favor. Like, why are you being such a jerk to me? Like, I saved your daughter. So they kind of have this little rocky start, but Jackson is just completely fascinated by the fact that someone would risk their life to save his child. And that, when he starts investigating her, that she really is as good as she appears to be. So it's just something where he's really fascinated. And we find out that they both are just going through things. Natalie's here, dealing with her family that doesn't know the reason because she didn't want to tell them the reason that she's no longer with her ex-fiance.
Yeah.
And Jackson is, still dealing with the, death of, his daughter's mother. And, he's just really closed off to the world. So the reason that it's called Catalyst is because they're both kind of this catalyst for change. for each
Mm.
other in a way that is like completely separate, but then also very connected. So it's like as soon as they connect, they are just ever locked in this, completely new arrangement, and the change that comes about from each of them giving something to each other. So, Natalie causes Jackson to, break down those walls a little bit, whereas like Jackson causes Natalie to really stand up for herself and, finally talk about what's going on. Um, but obviously, with Jackson living the life that he's living, he's got a lot of threats and he's got a lot of enemies. And those people have also kind of noticed that Natalie is Jackson's new paramour, that he's so enamored with her. So that kind of makes Natalie this target. So, that's where, Catalyst kind of comes to its head. And then Ignite is just the continuation of that story and their relationship together. So yeah, it's quite an adventure, but I think even though it does have like some darkness and these, morally gray characters, it does hint on, like what does true love look like when you actually do meet the person you're supposed to be with, and like how, changing it is to you as a person, kind of like your podcast. I never thought I would. I'm sure both of them think like, I never thought I would fall in love, or I never thought I'd fall in love with a Mafia Don. Which is kind of funny because that's the back of what's on Ignite is, she never thought she'd fall in love with a Mafia Don, and he never thought he'd fall in love at all. So
What an
just
inventive and exciting read. Like, I can't wait
thank
to get
you.
my hands on these books. So I have to ask you, how how did you come up with these ideas? Like, were you a big Sopranos fan and you're like, there's not enough romance here?
So I honestly don't know. I've written ever since I was a little kid. And I used to like live by myself. Like I was on a street that had, no other kids on it my age. So I just constantly was like inventing these big scenarios and worlds and imaginary friends. And that kind of led to me actually writing when I was younger. But I, as far as like the mafia aspect of it, I kind of started, I wouldn't say The Sopranos, but I did like Peaky Blinders a lot. I thought that that was a really interesting take. So I think there are some similar concepts between like just how the mafia is even run in my books and Peaky Blinders. And also like there was that movie that came out 365 days. And I loved that movie as well. But the thing that just I didn't love about it was the fact that he kidnapped her and kind of like forced her to be with him. Like, and I felt like as I started like looking at other mafia romances, it was kind of like one of three tropes. You either had a kidnapping scenario, or you had like an arranged marriage scenario, or you had, she saw something that she shouldn't have seen, and therefore she's stuck, in the situation. And I was like, it's just a reoccurring theme in that genre. So
And
I
very
thought, what if we kind
victim-y.
of like, what's that?
Very victim-y in all three of those
It's
scenarios.
very,
The
yes.
female is the
Yeah.
victim, whereas
Yeah.
in the piece that you wrote, the female is the hero.
She is the hero, and she actually, I always think like she kind of has that strength that I always thought that like single moms have, or like stay at moms have, like stay at home moms, because I always felt like, they have this sweetness, they have that mom aspect, but at the same time there is a strength behind them that, you know, yes, they will definitely invite you in for a cup of lemonade and some tea and a nice chat, but if you try to harm one of their babies, mama bear is going to come out and come after you. And Natalie is that type of personality. She's not an overly outgoing, like obnoxious person, but she's also not like quiet little wallflower either. She's just very observant, but she's definitely gonna, she can stand up for herself in everything else, but with this one aspect with her family. And I think having Jackson just come into her life really makes her realize her own strength. It's not like he gives her strength. She just realizes her own strength. Um, and so it was a way to definitely tell like the darker romance stories that I love, and to love those morally gray characters, but to also have it be like a story of empowerment, a story of strength, and a story of like redemption too. Jackson has this opinion that he's just not worthy of love. That's, how he's just kind of always operated since he was practically bred into this multi-generational mafia family.
Mhm.
And Natalie coming into his life, she's like, no, like, you're a really good dad, and you have all these aspects that you're not seeing about yourself. So they really just bring something to the table that the other person doesn't have, and they just make each other better in the process. With, like, obviously steamy romance and everything in there too. So, but it's kind of all the parts that I loved about the shows or the TV things I was watching, and then, like, replacing the parts that I didn't love as much. So just try to do something a little bit different. I think it walks that line between traditional romance and mafia romance. So yeah.
Very exciting. Oh my God, so creative. And I just love, like like you said, how you just kind of, you didn't like those other three tropes and you wrote your own. And that's what they say, write the book that you want to read.
Right.
And that's
Right.
exactly what you
I
did,
just kind of,
which is so
thank you.
fantastic. So please
Yeah.
tell us all, where can we find you? Where can we find your books?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Even though sometimes I feel like I am too old for TikTok, for sure. And then I have a website that is nherownwords.com. So just the letter N and then herownwords.com. And my books are on Amazon, and they are actually free on Kindle Unlimited as well.
Amazing. And of course, we'll have all the links below to make it easy for everybody to find you. Well, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to chat with me today. I'm a little
Thank you
disappointed
so much
that
for
I
having
didn't
me.
get to see your dog family, because I really would have loved to see all three of them.
I wish I had a picture. I can show you this little guy who's sleeping behind me. Well, I guess maybe if I angle
Benji!
the camera.
Hi,
Hey, Ben.
Benji!
There he is.
Oh,
He had to join. He always tries to make it into the camera. Every time he sleeps when I'm doing an interview or whatever, he's always like, I'm right here in case you need me. So yeah, he's my buddy.
Thank you so much
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. This was so much fun.
Yes, totally. And thank you all out there in the interweb for tuning in. I'd like to challenge you to do something you never thought you would do. Let us know what it is and where it leads you. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a beautiful day.